Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. We are from Group 8 and we will present our material about religion. But before that, let me introduce the members of the group. The first members is Indri Prameswari Zahro with student ID number 193200174. The second one is Afiatus Sonia with student ID number 193200171. And the third one is Meli Maulidia with student ID number 193200183. And the last, Fitria Amiratus with student ID number 193200187. There are 5 sub-material in our presentation. The first one is the definition of religion. The second one is Indonesian religion. The third one is American religion. And the fourth, British religion. And the last, Australian religion.
Okay, the first is the definition of religion. What is religion? Religion is a set of organized beliefs, practices, and systems that most often relate to beliefs and worship of a controlling force such as a personal god or another supernatural being. Well, this is a basic definition. There are many different understandings of what religion is, and not all religions are centered on a belief in a god, gods, or supernatural forces. The famed psychoanalyst Sigmund Freud described religion as a form of peace fulfillment. However, modern psychology recognizes that religion can play an important role in an individual's life and experiences, and can even improve health and well-being. In fact, studies have shown that religion can help people develop healthy habits, regulate their behaviors, and understand their emotions, all factors that can affect your health. Religion often involves cultural beliefs, worldviews, texts, prophecies, revelation, and morals that have spiritual meaning to members of the particular faith, and it can encompass a range of practices including sermons, ritual, prayers, meditation, holy places, symbols, trances, and fasts. The second is Indonesian religion. Religion plays a major role in life in Indonesia, which has the largest population of Muslims in the world. Many different religions are practiced in Indonesia, and their collective influence on the country's political, economic, and cultural lives is significant. The Indonesian Constitution states, "Every person shall be free to choose and to practice the religion of his her choice, and guarantees all persons the freedom of worship, each according to his her own religion of belief." The government, however, officially only recognizes 6 religions, namely Islam, Protestantism, Catholicism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. Indonesia has several flourishing religious communities that have lived in the area since ancient times. Indeed, Indonesia was once the heartland of successive Buddhist and Hindu kingdoms that used to rule the region prior to the advent of Islam. Even today, the island of Bali is still a flourishing center of Hinduism. Then, composition of religion in Indonesia from Statistik Indonesia 2010 population census. Muslims 87.2% with absolute number 207.2 million. Christian 6.9% with absolute number 16.9 million. Catholic 2.9% with absolute number 6.9 million. Hindu 1.7% with absolute number 4.0 million. Buddhist 0.7% with absolute number 1.0 million. And the last, Confucian 0.05% with absolute number 0.1 million. State-recognized religion. Islam. Indonesia is the world's most populous Muslim majority country. Traditionally, Muslims have been concentrated in the most populous western islands of Indonesia, such as Java and Sumatra. In less populous eastern islands, the Muslim population is proportionally lower. The history of Islam in Indonesia is complex and reflects the richness and diversity of Indonesian cultures. In the 12th century, many predominantly Muslim traders from India arrived on the islands of Sumatra, Java, and Kalimantan, where the religion flourished between the 12th and 15th centuries. The dominant Hindu and Buddhist kingdoms of the time, such as Majapahit and Sriwijaya, were the line, and the numerous Hindus and Buddhists mostly converted to Islam. Although a smaller number, as in the notable case of Hindus immigrating to Bali, moved off Java and Sumatra. Political parties based on moderate and tolerant Islamic interpretation have had significant, but not dominant success in the national parliamentary election in 1999 and 2004. Heartland Islamic parties, however, have had little electoral success. Nonetheless, a number of fundamentalist groups have been established, including the Majelis Mujahidin and their allied associate Jamaah Islamiyah. Christianity. The government of Indonesia officially recognizes the two main Christian divisions in Indonesia, Protestantism and Roman Catholicism, as two separate religions. Protestantism arrived in Indonesia during the Dutch East Indies colonization around the 16th century. The Dutch policy to ban Catholicism significantly increased the percentage of Protestant believers in Indonesia. Protestantism has expanded considerably in the 20th century, marked by the arrival of European missionaries in some parts of the country, such as Western New Guinea and Lesser Sunda Islands. Following the 1965 coup, all non-religious people were recognized as atheists, and hence didn't receive a balanced treatment compared to the rest of the citizens. As a result, Protestant circuits experienced a significant growth of members, partly due to the uncomfortable feelings toward the political aspiration of Islamic parties. Roman Catholicism arrived in Indonesia during the Portuguese arrival with space trading. Many Portuguese had the goal of spreading Roman Catholicism in Indonesia, starting with Maluku Island in 1534. Between 1546 and 1547, the pioneer Christian missionary Francis Xavier visited the islands and baptized several thousand locals. During the Dutch East Indies era, the number of Roman Catholicism practitioners fell significantly. Due to the Dutch policy to ban the religion, the most significant result was on the island of Flores and East Timor, where the Dutch concentrated. Roman Catholic priests were sent to prison and replaced by Protestant priests from the Netherlands. One Roman Catholic priest was executed for celebrating Mass in a prison during Jan Pieter John's tenure as General of the Dutch East Indies. Hinduism. Hindu culture and religion arrived in the Indonesian archipelago in the 1st century, later coinciding with the arrival of Buddhism, resulting in a number of Hindu-Buddhist empires such as Kutai, Mataram, and Majapahit. The Prambanan temple complex was built during the era of Hindu Mataram, during the Sanjaya dynasty. The greatest Hindu empire that ever flourished in Indonesian archipelago was the Majapahit Empire. This age of Hindu-Buddhist empire lasted until the 16th century, when the archipelago Islamic empires began to expand. This period, known as the Hindu-Indonesian period, lasted for 16 full centuries. The influence of Hinduism and classical India remain defining traits of Indonesian culture. The Indian concept of the god king still shaped Indonesian concept of leadership, and the use of Sanskrit in courtly literature and adaptation of Indian mythology such as Ramayana and Mahabharata. Then Buddhism. Buddhism is the second oldest religion in Indonesia. Arriving around the 6th century, the history of Buddhism in Indonesia is closely related to the history of Hinduism, as a number of empires based on Buddhist culture were established around the same period. The Indonesian archipelago has witnessed the rise and fall of powerful Buddhist empires such as Sailendra Dynasty, Sriwijaya, and Mataram empires. The arrival of Buddhism began with the trading activity that began in the early of 1st century on the Silk Road between Indonesia and India. The Chinese travel monk Xuanzang, on his journey to India, has witnessed the powerful maritime empire of Sriwijaya based on Sumatra. The empire also served as a Buddhist learning center in the region. A number of historical heritages can be found in Indonesia, including the Borobudur Temple in Yogyakarta and statues of present-day inscription from the earlier history of Buddhist empires. Confucianism. Confucianism originated from the Chinese mainland and was brought by Chinese merchants and immigrants. It is estimated at latest the 3rd century CE that the Chinese arrived in Nusantara archipelago. Unlike other religions, Confucianism evolved more into loose individual practices and belief as a code of conduct, rather than a well-organized community religion or way of life or social movement. It was not until the early of 1900s that Confucianism formed an organization called Tiong Hoa Wi Quan (THHK) in Batavia, called now Jakarta. After the independence of Indonesia in 1945, Confucianism in Indonesia was affected by several political tumults and has been used for some political interests. In 1965, Sukarno issued Presidential Decree Number 1 PN-PS 1965, in which six religions were officially recognized and embraced by the Indonesian people, including Confucianism. Earlier in 1961, the Association of Kung Siang Wai Indonesia (PKCHI), a Confucianist organization, declared that Confucianism is a religion and Confucius is their prophet. Other religions and beliefs. Animism. Animism, the belief in and worship of spirit found in nature or people, has existed since Indonesian English history. Furthermore, 2,000 years later, with the existence of Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, Confucianism, and other religions, animism still exists in some part of Indonesia. However, this belief is not accepted as Indonesia's official religion, as the Pancasila state the belief in the supreme deity or monotheism. Then Judaism. There are small unrecognized Jewish communities in Indonesia and Surabaya. An early Jewish settlement in the archipelago was through the Dutch Jews who came for the slave trade. In the 1850s, about 20 Jewish families of Dutch and German origin lived in Jakarta, then Batavia. Some live in Semarang and Surabaya. Several Baghdadi Jews also settled in the island. Prior to 1945, there were about 2,000 Dutch Jews in Indonesia. In 1957, it was reported around 450 Jews remained. mainly Ashkenazim in Jakarta, Sephardim in Surabaya. The community has decreased to 50 in 1963. In 1997, there were only 20 Jews, some of them in Jakarta, and a few Baghdadi families in Surabaya. Jews in Surabaya maintaining a synagogue, the only synagogue in Indonesia. They have little contact with Jews outside the country. There is no service given in the synagogue.
Okay, next, let's start to discuss about American religion. The United States is a secular nation, meaning there is a formal separation between state and religious entities. Society is underpinned by the strong principle of religious freedom that imposes people's liberty to worship any religion and to not favor one religion over another. This is evident in the First Amendment, which states Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Ultimately, there is a strong pluralist belief that various religious groups should be allowed to maintain and develop their faith and or beliefs within the common society. While the country is highly religiously diverse, the American national identity and patriotism is often linked to Christianity. Some examples include the public religious rhetoric of God Bless America or the statement "In God We Trust." Found on the currency. This blend of religion and patriotism may also be observed during major American holidays such as 4th of July ceremonies or Thanksgiving. The United States Census does not contain questions about one's religious affiliation. However, various institutions have conducted surveys to determine the religious demographic of the country. According to the Pew Research Center 2014, Christianity is the largest religious affiliation at 70.6%, and then non-Christian religions made up 5.9% of the populations, of which 1.9% identify as Jewish, 0.9% identify as Muslim, 0.6% identify as Buddhist, and 0.7% identify as Hindu. Finally, 22.8% identify as unaffiliated, which includes agnostics 4.0% and atheists 3.1%. And then next about religious diversity and pluralism. Religious diversity has been a prominent feature of America's religious landscape since the pre-colonial period among Native American religious traditions. There was no national or state religion established during the colonial period, although some individual states adopt official state curses. This religious freedom allowed for the flourishing of different Christian sects, communities, and movements during the country's colonial phase. Indeed, numerous Christian denominations and curses began in the United States, such as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as Mormonism. America's religious diversity is also a product of immigration, such as the waves of Jewish immigrants due to their persecution in the 19th century onwards. Many new Americans migrated to the country following the end of the national quotas in the 1960s, introducing new religions and new expressions of Christianity to American society. The religiously unaffiliated also contribute to the pluralism and diversity of America's religious landscape. According to the Public Religion Research Institute, the number of religiously unaffiliated, including atheists and agnostics, has tripled in size since the early 1990s, accounting for just under a quarter of the population, 22.8%. America is home to the new atheism movement sparked by atheist writers, for example, Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris. Christianity in the United States. Christianity has been the most prevalent and influential religion in American society since its introduction during the colonial period. For instance, while non-Christian religious groups are growing, they represent less than 6% of the populations. However, it is important to note that Christianity in America is incredibly diverse. Of the 70.6% of Americans who affiliate with Christianity, 46.6% identify with a Protestant denominations, 20.8% identify as Catholic, 1.6% identify with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, 0.8% as Jehovah's Witness, 0.5% identify as Orthodox, and 0.4% identify with some other kind of Christianity. Protestant denominations are further categorized among those who identify with an evangelical tradition, 25.4%, mainline tradition, 14.7%, or African American tradition, 6.5%. There are further subcategories in Christian denominations that often follow ethnic lines, for example, Korean Presbyterians, Nigerian Catholics, and others. The crossroads between ethnicity and religion have helped foster a multiplicity of expression and practices of Christianity and continually transform the religious landscape of America. For instance, as of 2016, almost half of those who identify as Catholic, 45%, were Hispanic or non-white, an increase from 13% in 1991. Christians in America tend to be more active in their practice comparative to many other Western countries. When asked whether religion is important in one's life, 58% of those who identified as Catholic and 70% of those who identified with a Protestant tradition state very important. Meanwhile, 39% of Catholics and 48% of those affiliated with a Protestant tradition attend religious services at least once a week. The vitality of Christianity in America is in part due to its pluralism. In fact, those who leave a congregation are much more likely to join or sometimes form a new one, rather than drift away from religion entirely. Next, about Judaism in the United States. The United States is host to the large Jewish population outside of Israel. This vibrant Jewish community has been produced by a long history of migration. The majority of Jews are third-generation migrants or higher, 67%, meaning most of their families have been established in the United States since the post-war period or earlier. This reflects the long-established presence of Judaism in the United States. In total, the Jewish population forms the large non-Christian religious affiliation in the United States, 1.9%, with most residing in the northeastern states such as New York and New Jersey. One can find synagogues, kosher grocery stores, and other Jewish-based facilities in cities with large Jewish communities, especially New York City. There are various streams of Judaism found in America, which has fostered diversity amongst the Jewish community. According to the Pew Research Center, 35% identify with the Reform movement, 18% identify with the conservative movement, 10% identify with the Orthodox tradition, 6% identify with other streams of Judaism, and 30% do not identify with any particular Jewish denomination. And then next, Islam in the United States. The Pew Research Center 2017 estimates there are roughly 3.45 million Muslims of all age living in the United States, making up about 1.1% of the total population. Of those who identify as Muslim, approximately 55% identify as Sunni, 16% identify as Shia, and 14% do not identify with a specific denomination of Islam. Religion plays a prominent role in the daily lives of most Muslims in America. For example, 99% of Muslims pray at least once a day, and 64% consider religion to be very important in their life. Mosques in America often act as community centers, allowing Muslims to meet outside of worship contexts for social and cultural occasions. America's Muslim population has largely been formed through recent migration. For example, while 42% were born in the country, 20% were born in South Asia, 14% from the Middle East or North Africa, 13% from other parts of Asia or the Pacific, 5% from Sub-Saharan Africa, and 6% from some other region. As such, local Muslim communities are often highly diverse, including people of many different cultural backgrounds and interpretation of Islam. Muslims in the United States face unique circumstances both in American society and within their communities. For instance, the events of the 2001 September 11 attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon have profoundly changed the experiences of Muslims in America and around the globe. Though American Muslims have found ways to voice their concerns and problems, some continue to face misunderstanding, prejudice, and discrimination. The last one from American religion is about Asian religions in the United States. Hinduism. The Hindu community in the United States is relatively small, with 0.7% of the population identifying as Hindu. Most of America's Hindus are immigrants, 87%, and the overwhelming majority identify as Asian, 91%. Historically, temple building was one of the primary means that Hindu communities sought to express their presence in America's religious landscape and to create cultural hubs. Today, there are approximately 450 Hindu temples around the country that help cater to the needs of America's Hindu population. Some temples are pan-Indian, meaning they incorporate various Hindu traditions. Some are dedicated to a particular branch of Hinduism, while others are regional, specific temples that emphasize language and rituals from a particular region. And then Buddhism. The Buddhist population in the United States is also relatively small, with 0.7% of the population identifying as Buddhist. America's Buddhist communities include a range of ethnic or racial backgrounds, including white 44%, Asian 33%, Latino 12%, other or mixed 8%, and African American 3%. However, it is common for individual Buddhist temples and meditation groups to be composed of a single ethnic group. Most forms of Buddhism have some representation in America, though their numbers and presence varies. For instance, Theravada Buddhism is primarily followed by Sri Lankan, Thai, Burmese, Cambodian, and Lao immigrants and their descendants. However, the Vipassana movement, also known as insight meditation, is particularly popular among white Americans. Okay, I think enough from American religion.
The next material will be explained by me, Fitria Amiratul Saida, with student ID number 193200187 under the title British Religion. Here are the division of Britain. There are three countries within Britain or United Kingdom. The first one is England, the second one is Wales, and the third one is Scotland. The official religion of the people in England and Wales is Anglican Christianity, while the people who live in Scotland are mostly adherents of the Presbyterian Church. Unlike the church in Rome, which is headed by an archbishop, The church in England is headed by the Queen of England with the title Supreme Governor of the Church of England. Even so, the countries in Britain do not force their people to follow other religions. In fact, the number of people who have no religion at all in England and Wales has exceeded the number of Christians at 52%. The history of Christianity in Britain covers the religious organization, policies, theology, and popular religiosity since ancient times. The Roman Catholic Church was the dominant form of Christianity in Britain from the 9th century through the Reformation period in the Middle Ages. The Anglican Church of England became the independent established church in England and Wales in 1534 as a result of English Reformation. In Wales, this establishment took place in 1920 when the church in Wales became independent from the Church of England, while in Scotland, the Presbyterian Church of Scotland established in a separate Scottish Reformation in 19th century, and it is recognized as the national church but not established. Following the Reformation, adherents to the Catholic Church continue at various levels in different parts of Britain, especially among residents and in the north of England, particularly from the mid-17th century. Forms of Protestant nonconformity, including Congregationalists, Baptists, Quakers, and Methodists, grew outside of the established church. The next is the percentage of religion in British. As the majority religion, Christianity reached 59.5%, non-religion 25.7%, Islam 4.4%, Hinduism 1.3%, Sikhism 0.7%, Judaism 0.4%, Buddhism 0.4%, other religions 0.4%, and not stated 7.2%. The history of religion in Britain. Before the entry of Christianity in the British Isles, British people today still adhere to paganism known as Celtic polytheism or Celtic paganism. The historical record of traditional belief in the area now known as Great Britain is scanty and fake. Christianity first entered the British Isles in the 3rd and 4th centuries through a relation with the Roman Empire in mainland Europe. However, the spread of Christianity in British Isles began to flourish during the pontificate of Pope George I in the early 7th century. Pope George sent Augustine from Canterbury to preach the gospel to the Anglo-Saxons. This evangelistic mission led by Augustine is known as the Georgian Mission. Augustine's first evangelistic work in Britain was in Canterbury when King Ethelbert and his followers were baptized. From this time, the city of Canterbury became the first archdiocese of the United Kingdom.
Next, this is the percentage of religions in Australia. The non-Christian religions represented in Australia include Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam. Buddhism is the largest non-Christian religion and accounts for 2.5% of the total population. Islam, the second largest non-Christian religion represented in Australia, today accounts for 2% of the total population. Hindu and Jews account for 1.3% and 0.5% of the total population respectively. Next, this is the percentage of religions in Australia.
The non-Christian religions represented in Australia include Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam. Buddhism is the largest non-Christian religion and accounts for 25% of the total population. Islam, the second largest non-Christian religion represented in Australia today, accounts for 2% of the total population. Hindu and Jews account for 1.3% and 0.5% of the total population respectively. Next is Christianity in Australia. Australia's major religion is Christianity. Christianity was introduced to Australia by the first British settlers in the late 18th century. Christian denominations were once historically correlated with one's ethnicity in Australia. During this time, one's religious and ethnic identification played a major role in determining one's education and opportunities in life. The social and class association with Christian denominations is no longer prevalent. However, it is common to find ethnic and national churches that continue to act as a cultural hub for many of Australia's diverse cultural communities. Judaism in Australia. Though the Australian Jewry is very young compared to the course of Jewish history, it is home to a vibrant and diverse community. The diversity of Australia's Jewish population grew during the early 20th century as Jews from different Europe countries such as Germany and Poland and some parts of the Middle East, mainly Egypt and former Palestine, began migrating to Australia. Approximately 91,000 people identified as religiously Jewish in the 2016 census, 0.4% of the population. However, this figure may be an underestimation of the total Jewish population due to ambiguities around Jewish as a religious or ethnic identity marker. Some may also fear declaring their Jewish identity due to collective memories of the Holocaust known as Shoah. It is not uncommon for Jewish family in Australia to have extended family members living in other parts of the world due to the long-lasting effects of World War II and the Holocaust. Okay, next is Islam in Australia. The first Muslims who settled in Australia in large numbers arrived in the 1860s as cameliers from South Asia. This early Muslim community was comprised of men with numerous cultural and linguistic backgrounds from Afghanistan and former British India, contemporary Pakistan, and regions of India, collectively referred to as Afghans or Gans. Australia's contemporary Muslim population reflects its diverse linguistic and ethnic migrant history. Many of Australia's mosques were originally established along ethno-linguistic lines such as Turkish, Lebanese, and Egyptian communities. The majority of Australia's Muslims are Sunni, followed by Shia. Australia is also home to a number of followers from various Sufi orders such as the Sadili, Mevlevi, Naqshbandi, and Nimatullahi. Some Australian Muslims may prefer see their Muslim identity as a cultural identification, while others are non-denominational. Hinduism in Australia. Hinduism was brought to Australia during the 19th century by small groups of Hindu who worked as farmhands, hawkers, and cameliers alongside Muslims and Sikhs. The Hindu community grew significantly during the 1970s. An assortment of various spiritual figures such as gurus, yogis, and swamis began introducing different expressions of Hinduism in Australia. Next is Buddhism in Australia. Buddhism has been present in Australia since the colonial period. The first known Buddhists arrived as itinerant workers from Asia, such as China, during the gold rush. Buddhism is the third largest religious group in Australia, with 2.4% of the population identifying with the religion in the 2016 census, approximately 563,700 people. Australia's Buddhist community continues to be very ethnically and linguistically diverse. Many of Australia's Buddhists have heritage in Buddhist countries. Sikhism in Australia. The introduction and growth of the Sikh community in Australia is closely linked to the larger pattern of South Asian migration. Sikhism is a monotheistic faith that emphasizes equality across all factions of society, especially gender and caste. Sikhism was founded in the Punjab region by Guru Nanak, 1469 until 1539, who was succeeded by nine gurus teachers over the span of nearly 240 years. The influence and presence of the Sikh community can be seen throughout Australia. For example, Sikh temples known as Gurdwaras can be found in various parts of Australia. These places of worship act as a site of congregational prayer and social activities such as sharing in communal meals, langar. Okay, the last is freedom and beliefs of religion in Australia. The Constitution guarantees religious freedom, and while there is no official national religion, Australia generally is described as a Christian country. Of course, freedom of religion must not only be protected, it must also be balanced against other rights. This doesn't mean that freedom of religion is a second order right. In fact, in international law, the right to freedom of religion is non-derogable, which means it can never be suspended, even in a time of public emergency. International human rights law does distinguish between the freedom to hold a particular religion or belief, which is absolute, and the freedom to manifest that religion or belief in conduct, which is not. This is a difficult distinction. Many people of faith report that it's hard to see the point of holding a belief if they can't also act on it. Religion, after all, is supposed to shape one's daily life. So, freedom of religion is guaranteed by Section 116 of the Australian Constitution, which prohibits the federal government from making laws establishing a religion, imposing religious teachings, or prohibiting the free practice of religion. People are free to express their diversity of views as long as they don't provoke religious hatred. The Australian government is also determined to promote mutual respect, understanding, and tolerance between different religions and cultures in Australia and across the region. Australia has fostered interfaith cooperation in the region through its involvement in the Regional Interfaith Dialogue, a process Australia is also sponsoring with Indonesia, New Zealand, and the Philippines. This dialogue brings together leaders from many faiths in the region to share experiences and identify ways to promote peace and understanding. Okay, guys, this is the end of Group 8 presentation. If you have any question, please drop in this group. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.